Shiva Sutras are the basic canonical aphorisms of Advait. They come from a 9th century sage called Vasugupta from Kashmir. Very brief, very succinct. They contain everything that there is to the understanding of non-duality. The first sutra says, Chaitanyam Atma. Consciousness is the self. If we go carefully into this one, this sutra alone, the first one alone, would open up everything that deserves to be known about self-inquiry. It will open up the beginning, the end, and also the method of self-inquiry. What does it say? Consciousness is the self. You will have to keep coming along with me. If I am an active speaker, you will have to be an active listener, an active listener. I like it when we all move together.
Excuse me, where did these verses come from?
They come from a 9th century sage from Kashmir, Vasugupta. But even he did not say that they come from him. He said he does not know where they come from.
Is it in a book? Does the
Huh?
book have a name?
Shiva Sutras.
Sorry?
Shiva Sutras. That's it. That's it. Now this surprises us because we do not expect an important, a serious work to be 2 pages. Huh? If it is important, if it is serious, and if it is as all-encompassing as I mentioned, then we expect that it must have a certain volume, a certain gravity. Not only the Shiva Sutras, Upanishads like Kain and Ish or Atma Puja Upanishad, they are all so concise. Yes, so we are talking about the first sutra, and it says, consciousness is the self. It must be remembered that when a sage, a seer, uses words, he does so just out of necessity of communication. He is trying to use words to express that which words cannot usually express. So he is emptying the word of its usual meaning and trusting it with a transcendental meaning. Hence, it would be an obvious mistake to take the words of a sage and attribute to them the dictionary meaning. When the sage says air, sky, water or ocean, he does not mean the air, the sky, the water, the ocean. We said, first of all, we have to see that it is out of sheer compulsion that he has to use words. He is using words because we can hear only words. Could we listen to his silence, he wouldn't have needed to use words. So he is using words, but not in their usual sense. Never. Let us never make the mistake of interpreting the words of a seer in our normal worldly way. What do we mean when we say consciousness? What do we mean when we say consciousness?
Waking state. Waking state.
The waking state. When we say consciousness, what we mean is the perception that there is the universe and there is the me. If you cannot perceive things, if you cannot perceive the universe, then you will not say that you are conscious. And because we are what we are, we have taken consciousness as the consciousness that we experience. That is what is ego-centered behavior. What is our consciousness? Consciousness is the content of mind. Consciousness is our thoughts, ideals, emotions, feelings, relationships. What is our consciousness? Our consciousness is doubt, fear, convictions, beliefs, attachments, imaginations, effort, attainment, beginning, end. That is what we call as consciousness. In the language of spirituality, all of that is not consciousness at all. What we call as consciousness is the interference of I in the facts of life. That is what we refer to as consciousness. And if we take that to be consciousness, then we would be misled into believing that Vasugupta is saying that ego is the self. Because he is saying consciousness is the self. And if consciousness means our consciousness, then our consciousness is an ego-centered consciousness, an I-centered consciousness. We look at the world as we are. We are greatly attracted to that which has a meaning to us. We are repelled by that which we have been taught to dislike. So man's consciousness is not pure consciousness at all. If a sage would look at the expanse of our consciousness, he would say, this is so mechanical. Why do you even call it consciousness? Why do you even label yourself as conscious? You are not conscious at all. To be conscious means to know. And to really know, you must be free of the blockage to knowing. You yourself, what you take yourself to be, are the biggest blockage to knowing. You don't really know. Let me present an example. As I am speaking right now, all of us would say that we are conscious of the words of the speaker. Right? You will say you are conscious of what I am saying, and you are conscious of the fact that you are hearing. And I have spoken hardly for 10 minutes or so. But if I say, let's write down what I have said, all of us would write down different things. Now, as a matter of fact, the speaker has not been talking of different things at all. Speaker has been centered around the one. But when we would write down what has been said, what we have been conscious of as the audience, we will write down very different things. In fact, we would be surprised by how much our narrative differs from our neighbor's narrative. You would feel like asking yourself, are the two of us attending the same session? Are the two of us listening to the same speaker? That is what is meant by an impure consciousness. The I is interfering with the listening, interfering in two ways. First, it is blocking everything that is a potential threat to it. Second, it is projecting much that it wants to project, that it would find as an enabler to its continuation. So even though we say that we are conscious of what is going on, the fact might be that we know nothing of what the speaker is saying. And it is such a great joke that even after a session lasting hours, we may go back having listened to nothing, having heard much and listened nothing. And if that might be happening in these couple of hours, it is obvious that that keeps happening throughout the run of our life. We believe that we know what is happening. We believe that we are conscious of what is going on. But the fact is that a very thick wall separates the happening, the existence from us. That separation is defined as the ego. When the sage speaks, he speaks from the heights of his being. When he says consciousness, he means a consciousness free of interference. He will not even say pure consciousness because he does not know any impure consciousness. We keep on talking of pure consciousness. We keep on talking of real love. What do we mean by real love? We must use words like real love because there is much unreal love in our lives. We keep on talking of the transcendental reality. Why? Because what we usually call as reality is not reality at all. And if we be really honest, then we must not call the reality as transcendental. We must call the reality just as reality, and that which we know as reality as totally unreal. Do you see what we do? We say consciousness, and then we say pure consciousness. Now, if consciousness is consciousness, what is the need for calling something as pure consciousness? If joy is joy, what is the need for calling something as absolute joy? If love is love, thank you, what is the need to call something as real love? It only indicates that with us there is much that is not absolute, not pure, and not real. Pure consciousness is called awareness. Pure consciousness is about just living in the facts. We live in perceptions and imaginations. We live within a self-created circle. That circle is what we call as the domain of our consciousness. At the center of the circle, we sit. The ego sits. When the sage says consciousness, he simply means the facts. The facts. The common man lives at the level of imagination. Higher than that is the level of facts. And these are the only two levels possible to the mind. The level of projection and self-centered imagination, and the level of impersonal facts. These are the only two things possible to the mind. Proceeding from here, the sage is saying the second level itself is the Atman. He is saying two things parallelly now. First, we live at the first level, the commoners, what we call as the well-adjusted worldly man. He lives at the first level, which is the level of assumptions and beliefs and imaginations. That is the first thing. Second thing that he is saying is, there is no level beyond the second level. Please be with this. He is saying that the mind is only two levels. One, that level where there is much I. That level where there is the fear and insecurities of ego and its desperate efforts to protect itself. And then there is the second level, the level of facts. And there is no third level. Usually, we believe that there indeed is a third level. We call that third level as the level of holiness, as the level of truth, as the domain of God, as pure and absolute reality. He is saying no, nothing like that really exists. There are only two levels, and the second level itself is the third. Do we see that he is suggesting the one and only method of self-inquiry? He is saying the second itself is the third. In a sense, he is saying that pure mind itself is the Atman. That pure mind itself is the self. Put differently, he is saying that facts are the door to truth. If you live in facts, that is sufficient. Consciousness itself shows up, shines as the Atman. But that consciousness must be real consciousness, not adulterated consciousness. Just live in the facts. Do not try other methods, tapasya or sadhana. Just know what is. Just know how you are sitting. Just know why you are in a physical particular posture. Just know why you are writing down certain things specifically and omitting others. Just know why you wake up with a certain thought. Just know why particular sights, sounds and phone numbers turn you off. Just know the facts and you are home. The second is the third. Facts are so proximate to the truth that if you are living in facts, then you are not at all away from the truth.
What do you mean by living in fact? What do you mean by fact?
So you are asking this question. The fact is that even as this question arises, I know from where it is arising. The question might be pure inquiry. I'm really sincere about knowing, and so I'm asking. And the question could also be self-defense. Living in facts means really and honestly knowing what is going on. Not letting my fear come in the way of my awareness.
You mean being present? Is that what you mean?
I mean not being biased. I mean not being present. If you are present, then you will interfere. If you are there, then you will poke your nose. So I mean don't be there. When you are not there, then only the facts are there. When you are there, then a picture of facts is there. And the picture that we create is always a distorted picture. So I'm not talking of presence, because we can never be present. Only the present can be present, and the present is the Atman. It is not about being present, it is about being absent.
Is fact the same as awareness?
Awareness is about the absence of thought, the absence of the need to interfere with the facts. You see, what we normally call as consciousness is a thinking consciousness. What we normally call as consciousness is an active consciousness, a consciousness that wants to do something, reach somewhere, protect something, destroy something, a consciousness that has a goal in mind. Awareness is a passive consciousness. Awareness is a consciousness that is settled, that has no need to...
I don't understand fact. Sorry, I don't understand fact.
So, when you say that you do not understand fact, this may be a very innocent expression that you cannot quite comprehend what I am saying. There might be another one who is not really getting what I am saying, but then he may say, you cannot explain facts. Do you see this? If I want to defend myself, suppose the question is coming from an insecure mind. Would the insecure mind say that it cannot understand? What would it say? He will say the speaker is unable to explain. Do you see how the need for self-protection has interfered with what is going on? The fact is, the simple and direct, obvious fact is, you didn't understand. And it is all right. It is so very all right. But if I am insecure about my image in front of the audience, then what will I tell the speaker? What will I tell the speaker? Oh, you could not quite explain it to me. Now, that is projection. That is the need to defend yourself. That is a thinking consciousness. Okay, it is like this. You see, sitting over here, is it possible to just look at that tree and not even call it a tree? That is awareness. But when you look at that tree, and that tree reminds you of the tree in your own backyard in your country, and that reminds you of what your husband or daughter or neighbor is doing, and that reminds you of the unpaid bills, and that reminds you of the hurt of the past, then that is a thinking and active consciousness. And there is another consciousness that looks at the tree and cannot even name it as a tree. It is just looking at that. At what? Nothing. If you ask, what are you looking at? Nothing. So it has a very empty glance. almost like that of an idiot. The eyes are not full of intention and meaning. The eyes are totally blank. And that is the eye of the saint. India has often said that the saint looks so much like a child and even like an idiot. That is because he does not throw meanings at things. If he doesn't get food, he will not say, I didn't get food, I am so unfortunate. If he didn't get food, he says, I didn't get food. If he didn't get food, he won't say that the world has conspired against him. If he doesn't get food, he will not say, will I get food tomorrow? No, he just says, I didn't get food. No food. Neither will it lead to an activation of memories, nor will it lead to the projection of a future. And the fact will have no impact on his self-concept and self-worth. I didn't get food. Now, does that mean that I'm inferior? Does that mean I'm unlucky? Does that mean I'm cursed? No, none of that. Does that mean I'm wonderful? Does that mean I'm the son of God? No, not even that. That is awareness, pure consciousness. The same thing has been expressed as a Mahavakya of the Upanishads. It says, Prajnanam Brahm. Same thing. Here it is being said, Chaitanyam Atma. There it is said, Prajnanam Brahm. Prajnan is awareness and Brahm is truth. Awareness is truth. And the same thing is being said here. In fact, Vasugupta has gone a step ahead. He is not even saying awareness. He is just saying consciousness. By just saying consciousness, he is making a very strong statement. His statement is in fact an insult to most of us. He is saying consciousness is to be called consciousness only if it is pure consciousness. That which you call as consciousness is just mechanical, robotic, impure movement. I won't even call it consciousness. He is saying that consciousness is a sacred word. It cannot be used lightly. When you are angry and shouting at someone, are you really conscious? When you are in the flow of emotions or greed or lust, are you really conscious? When you are walking on the street, you feel that you know that you are walking on the street, but do you really know what is happening? First of all, he is saying that is not consciousness. And when you are conscious, then that is the truth. That is the self. That is the Atman. Then you are identical with God. That is what the saints have meant when they have said that could you know what is all around and within you, you will only see God. By that they do not mean that you will start seeing a special figure somewhere. By that they do not mean that you will start experiencing a certain feeling in the heart. By that they only mean that you will continue to see the bird as the bird, the tree as the tree, the road as the road, the sound as the sound. But then the bird will be just the bird. Not bird plus something, not bird minus something. Then the tree will be just the tree. Not tree plus something, not tree minus something.
And why is it so important?
It is so important because that which is blocking you is also your suffering. So it is important only to you. When it is being said that consciousness is important, not blocking facts is important, you must ask For whom is it important? It is important to you. It is important to you because you are the one who suffer when this blockage happens. If there is no suffering, is there any need for any spirituality or self-inquiry? All self-inquiry begins with a recognition of a restlessness within. And that restlessness is nothing but the wheel on the consciousness, the wheel on the eyes. That is why the saints have been so frequently using the expression, wake up, wake up, wake up. No, don't you feel like asking? I wake up every morning. And why are the saints so insistent on saying wake up? Don't you wake up every morning? So why are they saying wake up? They are saying wake up because what you call as waking up every morning is just the changing of one dream into another. In the night you were dreaming and now you are dreaming again. The saints are saying you have not woken up at all.
Restlessness also leads to progression.
What you call as progression is needed only because you are restless. Are you saying the medicine has an absolute value? Would you worship a medicine? A medicine is needed only because, first of all, you are sick. And here, progress is a fake medicine because no amount of progress ever leads to an easing off of your restlessness. In fact, the more you progress, the more you feel like progressing. I call this need to progress, this ambition, as the false water that is quenching a false thirst. First of all, the restlessness is something false. And then one is using false methods to quench a false thirst. Mankind has made enough progress over the last 5,000 years. With all this progress, do you see a reduction in inner restlessness? Or do you project that there would be a point where material progress would reach one day, when there would be no need to know the mind, when the mind would be settled and composed on its own just by looking at the great inventions, technologies, and the wonders of economics? What we call as progress is a disease of the mind. The saint has no need for any progress, for progress always belongs to the future. And the saint is the one who has quit the future. Does any progress belong to this moment? This moment is just what it is. Progress means I will reach there tomorrow or day after or 10 centuries later.
So when you say that there are two levels of the mind, like when the second level is sustained, then there is no more, the first is gone.
First is gone and third is also gone because the third is the second. At the second, the above and the below are both gone.
But they still can be together at the same time while you are not sustained in the second, or how is that?
When you are in the second, you are living in the fact. And when you are living in the fact, then you also know that you are imagining. The fact of the moment is that I am lost in imagination. This ceaseless knowing of the fact is called witnessing. One does not really go anywhere. One just becomes subservient to two. So while one would imagine, one would ideate, but one would know that what I am in right now is an imagination, my personal imagination, not a fact of the moment. And when you really know that, then imagination loses its control, power and venom.
Then this level of the mind is a kind of tool, or like
it is your natural state.
Yeah, oh.
It is your natural state. It is not a tool to attain something. Had it been a tool, then three, the Atman, the center, would have been distinct from it. It is your natural state. See, living in facts does not mean thinking about facts. Living in facts does not mean taking names, providing definitions, coming to conclusions. The mind is anyway doing all of that all the time. Living in facts means that it is known that all of this is happening. And as all of this is happening, I am just the knower. So there are the three states of mind. And living in facts means knowing all the three states. All the three states are facts. A dream is a fact. When it is on, a dream is very much a fact, is it not? Have you ever called your dream a dream in the dream? Huh?
Yeah.
In the dream, you know that you are the horse.
But it happens in the life that we have a very great shock. Even this conscious life looks like a dream.
Yes. So those shocks are then not really shocks. Those shocks are acts of grace. If anything exposes that one is living in the middle of a dream, then we better not call it a shock. We call then it a gift. Is the first sutra clear? We must not go to the second one till we are one with the first.
He said facts and not the seer of facts. Just facts. Because for me, facts is still within my...
There can be
process.
no fact without the seer of the fact. Can there be a fact? Would you be able to talk about the fact if there is no seer? It is just that that seer is not the same as the seer in level 1. The seer in level 1 is the person, the me. The seer in level 2 is an absence. That absence is called the witness.
How can you see if you're absent?
Then you do not see. Seeing sees. See, why are you asking this question? You are asking this question because usually whenever we have seen, we have seen. Whenever you have seen, you have seen. So when I am using the word see, you are assuming that I am referring to same kind of seeing that you have been experiencing till now. No, I am not referring to that kind of seeing. For that kind of seeing, you will have to be present as the seer. I am talking of another kind of seeing which happens when you are not there. Let's take a current example. As I am speaking, you can listen and understand only if you are not there. Your understanding of what is happening right now will happen only in your absence. If you are present, then you will be present and understanding will be absent. So who is the one who is understanding right now? Your absence is understanding right now. You can very quickly bring in your presence. How? Your mobile phone rings. Your wife is calling. Now you are present. Now you have come back. Huh? You were totally immersed in the session, lost. And suddenly the mobile phone starts buzzing. And now you are again back. And when you are back, the session is? When you are back, then the session is over for you. It is your absence that really listens, that really sees, that really understands. Not your presence.
Yeah, now I realize I can't understand you because I try to associate what you say with something I know.
Yes.
And so it's not happening.
Yes. And the moment you try to integrate what I am saying with your existing knowledge, you will distort what I am saying. That is what is called as I-centric behavior. Essentially, you are saying, there is something that I already know. And because I am worthy, knowledgeable, wise and smart, so what I already know must be true. Now what you as speaker are saying sounds all right. So I'll try to adjust this to what I already know. I cannot reject what I know. I cannot reject what I know, because if I reject what I know, I'll actually be rejecting myself. I'll not reject it. Instead of rejecting that, I will assimilate this into that. And the moment you do that, you have corrected the fact. And we keep on corrupting the fact.
I think that confusion arises because different teachings use the same words. It could mean the opposite of things. When you say you are present, I understand you're talking about the false self, the filter of interpretation which distorts. But what you're saying is one's absence is what other teachings might express as your true self. And so the confusion of the mixing of terms.
The thing is that no teacher, no scripture of any worth has ever called us as present. I do not know from where is this neo definition coming. All the teachers have always said that only the self is present. Only the self. You can never be present.
But when other teachings say be present.
Which teachings?
Eckhart Tolle. But when he says presence, to my mind, that's synonymous with what you're saying is awareness.
The moment you say I will be present, you are saying the ego has the power to be present. That is such an ego-centered statement. And that is why you will be a bestseller. Because you are you're helping the ego like itself.
Like he said, what do we define as I?
Go to the fact of your life, Shiva. Go to the fact of your life. What do you call as I? When you say I am coming.
Well, this is the importance of defining your terms. Is I the ego or is I the...
It is, you don't need to define. You very well know. When I say you, what do you mean? When you say I, in which direction do you point?
Physical body. The body and the mind.
So it is certain that when we say I, all that we mean is the ego.
The man has said I, to mean that I, beyond the I.
So I. There is something there to indicate that it is not your I. But when it is said you can be present, then it is quite misleading. When it is said that you are absolute bliss, God, Brahman and the final truth, then it is just an inflation of the ego. You are none of that. You are just your suffering and the wounds and the pus that is coming out of them. But that sounds so humiliating.
Can anybody live without consciousness?
Do we live with an corrupted consciousness?
So it is consciousness.
It is consciousness if you are alive. Is it not possible that what we call as being alive is not even life? And it is just to maintain our sense of worth that we keep on saying we are alive. What I'm asking you separates us from the machines that we call as not alive. When you say that we are alive, and consciousness is so related to this thing called being alive, right? You say that living beings have consciousness. Now, what is it that we call as being alive? This breathing, eating, walking, thinking. You can have a sufficiently advanced machine that can do all of these. It can even make love. It can have emotions. It can even die. You can program it to die after a time. So, why are you proceeding from the assumption that we are in fact alive? Maybe life is something that is just a potential to most of us. Maybe we haven't really yet taken birth. Maybe we are here just to be born. Why are you assuming that we are already alive? Huh?
We were told so.
We are told so by those who thought that they were alive. And we were so much like them. And if they are alive, they must tell us that we are alive, because if we are not alive, then it is proven that they too are not alive. Spirituality is not about taking things blindly at face value. It is about really having the courage to stand the fact of anything, even if it is distasteful.
What makes a person alive?
The person can never be alive. The person is just a machine. There is nothing in the person that you can call as distinct from a machine. You call this as the person, you call this as the person. There is nothing in any of this which is any different from an instrument, an equipment, a machine.
What makes us going forward to become a person?
We are already persons. We are persons already. Persons we already are. Life is something different. Life is when you are not self-contained, when you are not programmed. Are we not programmed to walk away from places that we do not like? Now, are you alive? If you start feeling insulted at every small barb and you get away, walk away, are you alive? Oh, the machine is programmed. Humiliation is equal to, yes, next line, get up, gather your luggage, walk down the stairs, disappear. Now, are you alive? Are you alive? Somebody has written this code for you. That somebody could be evolution, that somebody could be your parents, society, religion, education, anything. Somebody has written the code and you are living as per the code. Are you alive? Somebody has written the code that you must marry, you must have kids, a family, you must go to holy places. When you start feeling really...
We are potentially alive because we can reprogram ourselves.
Yes, but the potential is so distinct from what we have made of ourselves. What we have made of ourselves, can that really be called as life? And if we call that as life, then the potential will remain potential. The first step is to see that this is not that. And when you see that this is not that, then you have suddenly arrived close to that.
And what makes us see that it is not that?
We don't like it. We don't like it. It's as simple as that.
No, there must be something.
Suffering, our own suffering.
There must be a force that brings you forward.
Just your suffering. The force makes you suffer. If you are not...
Force can bring us forward also.
The force can bring us
Also forward.
forward, meaning where?
To see.
To see the force itself?
No, to see that we are suffering.
You don't have to see that you are suffering. Are you not already suffering?
No.
If you say that, see, if a suffering mind, go into this, if a suffering mind tries to see that it is suffering, then it is assuming that it has the power to really know. And had it had the power to really know, why would it be suffering? Suffering itself means that you do not know what is going on. And if you do not know what is going on, how will you know the fact of suffering?
How we come out of this?
We'll go into that. Maybe the moment you ask this, how do I come out of this? You have already gone into a prohibited area. Maybe just constant acknowledgement that this is suffering is enough.
And where is this coming from?
For the sufferer, it is coming just from the suffering. It would be very easy for me to say it is coming from grace or God or...
Acknowledgement. The acknowledgement.
The acknowledgement is coming from the depth and intensity of his suffering. You are compelled to accept that you are suffering.
But there must be a force that makes you.
The very same force that makes you suffer.
Yeah, and the same force makes you acknowledge.
That you cannot say, because had you been acknowledging that force, you wouldn't have been suffering in the first place.
So where's the way out?
The way out is to just see that you are suffering.
Then where is this coming from?
It is coming from the same place from where this question is coming.
And what do you name it?
There is no need to name, it is coming.
I call it consciousness.
If you call it consciousness, then you must not call all of that consciousness which you normally live in. If in this moment you are conscious, then call only this as consciousness. Then do not call all the other rubbish as consciousness.
Otherwise, the rubbish cannot exist without consciousness.
No, if this is consciousness, then the rubbish can exist only without consciousness. Because this is not what you are otherwise. And if you are otherwise just what you are right now, then you are already home. If you are conscious right now, then do not call that as consciousness which is happening on the road, by the river, in the ashram, on the yoga mat, in the room. Then none of that is consciousness.
You saying we are just machines without consciousness or anything?
I am saying the way we operate is no different from machines.
Okay,
Simple.
okay,
And no more than that, no less than that.
okay. And what brings us out? This is my net.
Does any machine ever say that it is a machine?
It can maybe when it's acknowledged that it is a machine.
Can you ever design such a machine? Please do that. A machine that really knows that it is a machine.
There is a link. What's not a link? How you come
That link,
here?
and the desire to explain that link is what is called as the ego.
What's
You know-
beyond the ego?
What is?
Beyond the ego?
A dropping of this question.
And who is dropping it?
Just the question itself gets dropped. The ego itself gets dropped.
And who is dropping it?
If there is still a dropper, the dropper is the ego.
And what is behind the dropper?
There is, behind the dropper, there is more of the dropper. So don't talk of behind and dropper and dropping. Till the time you are asking, the ego is asking. The question itself needs to be dropped. And if you cannot drop it, then live with it.
So how is it happening?
If the question continues, then you are continuing.
So is it grace maybe?
You want to give it a name, it is a name that you would give. Why do you want to contain the infinite in your name? Why is the ego so important to you?
There is how you explain it. Sorry, how you explain it is like there is no way out.
No, there is no way out. There is no way out at all. Because if there is a way out, you would be so eager to believe that you can proceed on that way, that it is within your potential to take that way. You must feel totally helpless. You must feel without any power. It is only then that you will surrender. All these questions are just a tactic to not to surrender. All these questions are intended to believe that there is a way out. For whom? For me. So I am so smart that I can figure the way out and then move on it. I don't need to surrender. Where is the question of grace if you are asking for a way? Does grace come on ways appointed by you? Does grace walk on ways built by you? Then why must you talk about ways so much? Just so that you are still in command. Just so that God is still a servant to you. Even if God sends grace, He will send it on my ways. Drop the question. As far as we are concerned, please see that Vasugupta is saying that 2 is 3, meaning that when you come to the fact of suffering, proceed no more. That is your full stop. Just see that you are stuck. And then don't try for activity or progress or methods or solutions. When you don't try for methods or solutions, then He sends His methods and solutions. That is why there must be no gap between you, the fact, and you, the truth. Just come to the fact and stay there. Now that requires a really surrendered mind, because when we come to the fact, we also quickly want to come to a conclusion and then a plan of action. Have you seen this? The moment you see that something is the way it is, you want to do something about it. We talked of the active consciousness, right? The moment we come to a fact, what do we do with the fact? We do something with the fact. Now that is the ego that wants to do something with the fact. Spirituality consists of coming to the fact and stopping, remaining there. No, nothing is to be done. No way, ahead or forward or back or behind, no progress, no here, no there, no future. Just this, and this is it. When you say this is it, you have just said what Buddha called as Tathata. This is it. Neither forward nor backward. This is it. And that is consciousness. Living in this. And that is also the real meaning of living in the present. This is this and nothing else. Huh? I'm not saying this is bad and hence I want relief from it. I'm not saying this is wonderful, so I want to sustain it.
It's quite difficult to say this is this, because there's many things around me which is this, but I can't, my head can't take all this.
And
so when I say this is this, I'm focusing.
Yes.
By focusing,
and
it's not.
I am focusing and I am focusing. This is it. What is going on? In my limited sense of self, what is going on? I am
Limited.
focusing. And this is it. That doesn't mean that I am worthless. That doesn't mean anything. What am I doing? Concentrating. What am I doing? Dividing. I am dividing. And that is honesty. If you say, I am dividing, but I do not want to divide, that is ambition. If you are saying, I am limited, but I want to be unlimited, that is dissatisfaction. Yes.
So the facts are what we are feeling inside us, what we are doing, what we are feeling,
All of this is going on, and all of this is factual. All of this.
Now, again, it happens to me again. I'm wondering why I'm here, because I kind of try to hear your word and to find something to do.
Yes,
You know?
yes,
So
yes,
it's like,
yes.
Then maybe I should.
Something to do, at least something to come to.
Yeah.
Some statement to conclude. I heard this, now this is what comes out of it. All right, I heard the speaker. And what do I do with what I heard? No, do nothing. When you do nothing, then great action happens. Then right action happens. Just be alive to the happening. You are the deadness. Don't let the deadness come in between. Just be alive to the happening. I repeat, are we fully one with the first sutra to the best of your limited capacity?
Yes.
Yes.
So far we have treated it mostly in a theoretical way. Expand it to see what it means to our daily living, please.
It's kind of being stupid. Everything happens, you just see and not.
See how? Like this? No. When
Things happen
the
that
word
don't-
seeing is used in the spiritual sense, it does not quite mean seeing with the eyes. That is why Shiva is depicted as having
3 eyes.
3 eyes. You have to see with the third eye. These 2 eyes show you only falseness. This eye shows you the truth. If you are seeing only with 2 eyes, you are not seeing at all.
Seeing
You can ask this with respect to these two eyes. You see with this eye, when you stop asking how to, every how to is a question of the power of ego. I can do it, now tell me how to do it. Obviously, I have the power to do it. Just tell me how to do it. I'll just now do it. Never ask how to, because you cannot. When you cannot, then it happens. Then it happens.
You're telling us how to right now.
Yes?
You're telling us how to right now.
Yes.
That's your function.
Yes.
How
You're saying all how to questions are pointless.
Huh?
You're saying all how to questions are pointless, right?
Yes, yes.
So if your role is to explain how to, then how can you marry the two?
I do not have any how to give to you. When you have a how to, all I say is it is useless. I do not have any method to give to you. And when you demand a method, all I can say is, I don't have one. And if I do give one, it would be useless. Friend, I am not speaking out of a method, out of some practice or rehearsal. A method is predetermined. You very well know that you have something in your kitty, and when a situation arrives, you can apply that tool. The tool is in the toolbox. The moment that contingency comes, you pull out the tool and you apply it. I have no tools. I have no methods. And so I have all the tools.
But isn't saying stop asking questions, isn't that in itself a method?
No, I'm not saying stop asking questions. I'm saying see where all your questions come from. A question can arise from genuine self-inquiry also. And when a question is such that the answer would embolden the ego, then I point that out. A question is a movement. A question is mental activity. Mental activity could either take you towards the center, if it is diminishing in nature, or it could take you further away from the center if it is increasing further and further. The sign of a good question is that it asks for dissolution,
What, sorry?
its own disappearance. Huh?
Yeah, I understand. What such a question would be?
I can give an opposite example. I can give an example of a question that extends itself infinitely. Because the dissolution of a question depends not on the question, but on the center from where the question is coming. Any question can dissolve. You could just ask, what was that? And that's all. Or you could ask a question like, what is A? I say A is the dual opposite of B. Then you ask, okay, what is B? I say B has no existence on its own. It is the dual opposite of A. So you ask me, what is A? I say A is that duality which expresses itself as all A's and B's. So you say, okay, what are all A's and B's? I say dual opposites of each other. So, okay, so what is A and what is B? Now do you see what is happening? This is just that the question is refusing to go away, because if it goes away, then the ego will drop. So this is then not a question. This is then a conspiracy to shield oneself. Questions are wonderful. Questions are beautiful. If questions are an expression of the illusioned mind, to move into clarity, they are most beautiful. But a hallmark of such questions is that, as I just said, that they are converging questions. They ultimately come to a point where they don't even need an answer. They just go. So keep asking questions, not stop asking questions. It's upon me to tell you when not to ask. You keep asking. You keep asking because anyway you are asking all the time. What is a question? A question is the perception of a contradiction, of a problem, of a challenge. That's what a question is. Don't we keep perceiving that all the time? We are living in questions, so keep expressing them. Keep expressing them.
But is there any matter to sudden death of the question and the question?
When it gets seen that every question is essentially the same, then you no more feel like asking the next one, because the next one will be the same as the previous one. Why ask anymore? When you see that there are no new questions, then you don't feel like asking the next one. When you feel that now this one is a new one, then you will keep shooting questions.
So it's like that if you that's the questionless, choiceless. I mean that it's you yourself as a consciousness knows it's not going to happen in 2-3 days. But all of people, including me, stop going to and come to the conclusion that I am a consciousness already. I don't need to become one.
Stop. If you really do not know anything, do you also know that it cannot happen in 2-3 days? You see how the ego hides even in harmless statements. You are saying, I am so humble that I have come to accept that for me it cannot happen in 3 days. Now you are saying that I know at least this much. How much?
This much.
This much. And that this much is so much. What are you saying? You are saying, I am so wise that I know that it cannot happen. Drop this knowledge also. Drop even this knowledge. Are we one with the first sutra?